everyone, welcome to the Movieception Show. My name is Fariba, and today I want to do my movie review on Women Talking. And one of the great things about it is it was one of the 3 movies I had not yet seen from the Best Picture nominations. I did predict that Women Talking was going to be listed as one of the top 10 films going into it, even though I'd never seen it. But having heard about, the reception about it from the critics, from those who had seen it in the limited releases, there have been a lot of talks about how phenomenal this film is. Particularly when you look at the actual cast for the film, it is remarkable. You have Rooney Mara, you have Jessie Buckley, you have Claire Foy, Frances McDormand. You have a long list of amazing actors in this film. This was going to be a movie where you really had the best of the best performances coming into this film. And that's why I had already assumed that it was going to be one of the top 10 films going into the Best Picture nominations. And it ended up being the case either way. And thankfully, the movie has now been arriving in theaters this past weekend. I finally saw it yesterday. I believe it is now wide. And I finally got the chance to see it. For me, aside from the fact that there was a big cast, this is a movie that, has people, or at least women actually talking, which I'll talk about in a second. I really did not have much of an idea what this film was about. I didn't even look up the synopsis. In terms of the trailer, I do believe I've seen at least a single trailer, but I didn't look too deep into it. This was a film that I really was just going in almost completely blind, regardless of the fact of what this film was going to be about. I only just went off of it by, critics' responses, the fact that this is a full-fledged cast. That was really what, pushed me to go and watch this film, as well as the fact that it did get the Best Picture nomination last week. So yeah, having said that, I have now seen it, I've watched it, and let's be very clear what this film is. This film is literally about women talking. There is no misleading about the title for this. It is literally about a movie where women are talking. But regardless of that being the premise of this film, the actual purpose, the actual message, what's happening in this film is what really makes it so impactful about this film, right? I mean, when you do have a film that is dedicated to almost having 2 hours of just pure dialogue, I mean, I know that can be a bit of a, throw off, not a lot of people being too interested in it. At least that was kind of the problem for me, where I'm watching a movie like Tar, where it's just mostly focused on a character, where I'm just kind of not into. And this is a film that could have been a hit or miss for anyone. But I, of course, gave it a chance to watch it. And I mean, as you're really going into this film, right, you start to understand that this movie is far more than just about women talking. This is a set of collective women coming together, having this very, I would say bureaucratic sort of discussion, in a sense even diplomatic, in a way that they have this really good conversation, deciding on what they need to do for not just themselves, but to help out and make a decision for a whole group of women living in a colony. For one thing, I did not know this was a film that kind of had a bit more of, I didn't even know this movie was based on a true story. Apparently it was based on the Mennonites back, I believe, in South America. I don't know much about it, but I believe that's what the story is based on. I definitely, as I was watching this film, I was really getting a lot of Amish, mostly FLDS vibes out of it, because I am a bit familiar with those stories. That was something I was getting off of this. It is kind of going into the depths of what a woman's role is and sort of the society that they're established are very different from the rest of, religious dominations. But in this film, right, we see a whole group of women deciding on whether or not they want to stick around, decide on whether they want to, continue to be oppressed by the power of men who decide on what can and cannot happen. And when things do become harmful, they do nothing about it. And the women continue to be in this systematic sort of repeat of abuse and neglect and lack of power and voice in the community. And this is what becomes a really big talking point, and what these, council of ladies come in, talk about what they need to do to not just defend themselves, but the whole group of women and the children who are now facing the system as well, where they're now going to be induced with the same system if they don't stop the cycle, right? And the more and more you go into this film, the more you start to really acknowledge just how incredible the dialogue is between the characters, the things that they do discuss about whether or not, the pros and cons of whether to leave, whether to stay, whether to not do anything. These are the big talking points in this film where you're really sucked into this whole conversation, this whole discussion, argument that they're going into. And you're really kind of keeping your mind open that, well, this is not a one-sided conversation. This is a collective group of women really having their voices heard. And the more you listen to it, the more you start to really understand what they're going through. And just from the dialogue itself, it really shows just how powerful this whole film is, just trying to depict what these ladies are going through, what they need to do to, to stop this sort of cycle, as I mentioned before, the system. And as you get more and more into this film and start to see kind of what's happening to them and start to understand their viewpoint, their mindset, their mentality, you start to really feel even more like you start to feel for them. And I mean, that's just not just coming as a fact that, what's happening with the story, but also kind of going to a more worldwide, issue with women have to deal with. Like, we're still dealing with the fact that there is still this abusiveness towards women, how women are still dealing with this oppression, this sort of inferiority, the fact that, they're not being protected, the fact that, there is a thing like the Me Too movement, or the fact that we are still dealing with the fact that, abuse is still happening, whether it be domestic, physical, mental, all that sort of stuff still happen. And we're kind of seeing a bit of that picture in a different light here in this film, where we are, again, seeing a whole group of women deciding on whether or not they want to continue with the system or they want to leave and do what they think is necessary to protect their kids. And the more and more you dive deep into this film, right, again, I'm literally rooting for them. Like, yes, this is a whole conversation. Again, this could have gone any way where it would have just been boring. It would have just been, it wouldn't have been enlightening. It wouldn't have been anything, but it served a purpose. It served a purpose where it literally shows, again, the mentality they're going through, kind of just their journey that they're hoping to go. They're trying to convince each other that, hey, despite how scared we are feeling, let's also realize that this is something that we must do. And they have to keep on figuring out a way to justify their actions in a way that they shouldn't be scared anymore, that there is that collective group of people, that the fact that they are a group together, that they can be together and, they can survive whether or not, the decision ends up being a good case or not. And again, the more and more you hear the story, it becomes so powerful. And of course, one of the reasons why this film does such an incredible job is going back to this cast. I mean, I'm literally listing off big names like Jessie Buckley, Claire Foy, Rooney Mara, even Ben Whishawn's in this film. You're literally, as much as the fact that this is a film that has such a huge cast, you really feel for each character. There's at least like 15 characters in this film, and it could have been so impossible to really give each one sort of their own stance on anything, right? And let alone when we look at a film like The Avengers, right? Or when we look into the MCU in general, right? Like, we always kind of point out where we see this inconsistency, kind of this, this lack of focus, or this lack of inequality on really giving equal screen time for each character. Whereas here, it's like, despite the fact that there are 15 characters that we are focusing on, plus some more, like, that's just how much I can think of off the top of my head. The matter of fact is that somehow Sarah Polley does just an incredible job giving each character equal opportunity to give their voice, to really talk and, give their own opportunity to, express their own thoughts about what's going on, to give their own, light of what they think of the situation. And each story that you hear, you feel more and more for them. There isn't a single character where you don't feel that you feel so sorry for, that you feel like you want them to succeed, that you feel like, hey, you need to go out there and make sure that you are not just going to sit there and do nothing. I want you to go out there and actually do something, whether it be fighting and staying and fighting, or leaving and trying to make sure that your kids have a better life, a better lifestyle where there is respect for both men and women. And that, that ends up becoming the case, and not just that, but also teaching the young boys how to respect women. And the more and more you go into the story, right, like, you're feeling for them. I remember just like going closer and for me, like, getting closer and closer to the end of the film, like, I'm literally like soaking in tears, just how powerful the story is. This screenplay by Sarah Polley is just incredible. Like, I knew that she was going to be nominated for Best Screenplay. I've been hearing about it. I believe she's been winning some of the big awards, like the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice, or at least she was nominated for the Golden Globes. I know she won the Critics' Choice. I would imagine that she was also, I believe she was nominated for the WGA as well. And let me just say that the way that Sarah Polley balances everything off in this film, regardless of the fact how many characters there are, the fact that, there is, it's just really dialogue heavy, and that's what this whole film is about. It doesn't take away the fact that this isn't a very impactful film that is worth watching. It really gets you deep into this discussion that's going on, and that the more and more you hear from them, the more and more you start to understand what they're dealing with, the more you start to understand the emotional impact these characters are going through, and that you are also rooting for them. That, yes, this is going to be a difficult decision, but at the same time, like, you can resonate with what they're dealing with. And again, like, the more you go into this, the more you just want to cry for them, because again, this is a very, very hard decision that they are making for not just themselves, but for a whole community of ladies, woman, mother, young daughters, and even for their young sons who are still at an age where they can still be educated on things like understanding how to respect women. Again, this is a film that I truly did not expect would really get me so deep into this film, get me so immersed into what was going on. I didn't even think a movie where it was just about women talking was going to be exciting or at least interesting. And yet that ended up becoming the case by the time I got to the end of this film, because holy crap, this is a film that would really make you cry. Like, I cannot express how much I was crying by the time the film had ended and rolled its credits. It was just not just me, of course. There's a whole bunch of other people also crying, mostly ladies as well, but which makes a lot of sense, because this is a very, it's not like this is a one sort of situation, one kind of case. This is an ongoing issue that's been happening in today's generation, things in the past, things that still happen across different cultures and traditions, and even in religions, right? And so that's just something that I wanted to point out. And again, like, this is a film that's definitely worth seeing. It's really saddening that this film hasn't really been getting such big, I guess, reception out of it. You can say it hasn't been getting that much attraction from a large audience as I would have hoped to see. I mean, again, like, if it wasn't for the fact that, this was a movie that was getting a lot of buzz, I probably wouldn't have seen it, or probably would have just watched as a pastime. But again, this is a film that I honestly am glad I have seen. I wish that this film could have gotten a better buzz out of it, just because, again, this is an incredible story to watch, and the way that it is executed is just mind-blowing. But yeah, that's all I would like to say about Woman Talking. If you have not seen it, I totally recommend you go and watch it in theaters while you still can, because I don't know how long it's going to be in theaters. But yeah, again, a movie worth watching. I probably would give it like a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It is just that incredible. Like, for you to get me to cry for not just like maybe a bit of a second in one part, but just to continue it off by the end of the film, like, that is very incredible. Again, the things that have been done, the meticulousness of this film, the way it goes to the discussions, I mean, it's mind-blowing. Like, it is very philosophical, it's very eye-catching, it's very eye-opening. It really goes into a deep conversation and something that you will be immersed in. So yeah, that's all I have to say about Woman Talking. Let me know your thoughts. Have you seen it? If you have not, I totally recommend that you see it. If you have, what are your thoughts about the film itself? Were you also kind of worried about this film being mostly about women talking? Did your, Were your expectations not as you had expected? Did it defy your expectations? Did you ended up enjoying it? Did you cry like I did? Or is there some parts of the film that you just did not enjoy or could not really understand? Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe.